Good evening. I'd like to call the December 3rd City of Wilmington Planning Commission to order. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, Commissioner Jones will be here momentarily. Mr. Attorney, do we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. The Planning Commission advises City Council on applications for rezoning, land development code amendments, street closures, and long-range plans and policies. The Commission holds legislative hearings, meaning that anyone wishing to speak on a request may do so. The Commission issues a recommendation based on consistency of the request with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code and consistency of a request with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and other relevant adopted plans and policies. For the presentation of items, all matters requiring Commission action shall be presented to the Planning Commission by the planning staff and the applicant. In situations where the planning staff is the applicant, there will be only one presentation. City staff will make the first presentation. The applicant will make the second presentation. To maintain an orderly meeting, all presentations shall proceed without interruption unless the Commission desires to intervene with questions or comments. For the public hearings, the Chair will open the public hearing for those physically present wishing to speak about an item. Those in favor of an item shall be heard first, followed by those opposed to an item. A 10-minute time will be allowed for public comment in favor of an item, and a 10-minute time will be allowed for public comment in opposition to an item. A staff member will track the 10-minute time periods and will notify the speaker at the 5-minute mark, 1-minute mark, and verbally call time when time expires. The Chair, in their discretion, may extend these time periods. Ms. Painter, are you our timekeeper this evening? Excellent. I'm not sure it's going to be relevant, but all groups, organizations, neighborhoods, or similar associations desiring to comment are asked to appoint one spokesperson to present their concerns or point of view to the Commission on each agenda item. The public has been encouraged to submit their comments in writing via a web-based form located on the City of Wilmington's website. All comments received prior to 3 p.m. today were forwarded, unedited, to the Planning Commission. All comments received will be delivered to City Council when the item advances. All comments received will be made available to the public if requested. Ms. Bradshaw, I'm assuming we didn't get any?
That's correct.
Thank you. Voting. All votes will be roll call votes after proper motions are made and consistency statements read into the record. The Chair will state the outcome of the vote and the action. Rezoning requests that receive an unfavorable recommendation from the Planning Commission may be appealed by the applicant to the Wilmington City Council. Appeal should be in the form of a letter submitted to the city clerk within 10 days of this hearing. Any item that is appealed will tentatively be heard by City Council at the January 20th, 2026 meeting. All right. First item of business will be an approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Any commissioners have any comments, corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes as,
hang on.
sorry, excuse me.
Sorry.
Commissioner Kofer?
Sorry to interrupt. I was not at the meeting, but I was using these minutes to get me up to speed on the agenda item for tonight. And it's that in the minutes, it says to reduce the side setbacks from 15 to 10. I think it was meant to be the rear setback from the October meeting. We were reducing the rear setbacks from 15 to 10, not the side setbacks.
Well, I'll make that change. That'll be noted in the final record that's posted online. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, that was the only.
Thank you for pointing that out. Anybody else? I have a motion from Commissioner Collier.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Adams. All those in favor, Commissioner Kofer? We're going to do it this way.
In favor. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, Commissioner, we're going to do roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Yay.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. I don't think we'll have any procedural items to deal with. Any old business to discuss? New business. The first item is the Land Development Code amendment to amend City Code Chapter 18 to amend the dimensional standards and duplex design standards in the R3 residential district. And our planning director, Ms. Linda Painter, will be presenting.
Good evening, members of the commission. As Commissioner Kofer just noted, this application that is before you may look somewhat familiar. The last time you met in October, you had an applicant-initiated petition to make some changes to the R3 district, and those changes are shown on the left side of the screen. Essentially, it was correcting a typographical error in the R3 district purpose statement, reducing rear setbacks from 15 feet to 10 feet, and removing the minimum lot area requirement for duplexes in the R3 district. And you unanimously recommended approval of the proposal. We're here this evening because after your recommendation and prior to this being brought to City Council, staff started to have some internal conversations about potential unanticipated consequences that might be associated with this. Particularly with regard to the fact that in December 2024, the North Carolina legislature adopted a statute that essentially says if a municipality makes any change to its zoning regulations that decreases the intensity of development, we would need to have written approval from every property owner that could be affected by that change in order to do that. So as we looked at this proposed amendment from the applicant, we realized that in eliminating the minimum lot area requirements for duplexes in the R3, we were really throwing a very wide door open that if we started to see issues and have concerns about impacts on neighborhoods with that change, we would not be able to go back and make adjustments. And so what we're doing this evening, and I will say we did work with the applicant on this, the applicant voluntarily withdrew their application under the understanding that staff would be bringing a revised application forward. They have seen the revised application. They know what is being proposed, and that was acceptable to them. But what we are proposing is instead of eliminating the minimum lot area for duplexes in the R3, we are suggesting using an incentive approach where we can take a more iterative step-by-step approach to kind of opening that door to removing barriers so that we can see how it works before we go further and continue to go down a path that we may not be able to come back from if we start to see impacts to neighborhood character that are detrimental. So the proposal before you, if you look at that middle column, the only difference between the two proposals, the one from October and the one that you're going to be looking at this evening, deals with the minimum lot area requirement for duplexes. And so the proposal is to reduce, instead of eliminating that minimum lot area, to reduce it to 2,500 square feet when certain building orientation standards are met. And I'm going to go through those for you. So just as a recap, the R3 zoning district currently only exists within the 1945 original corporate boundaries of the city. The map that you see on the right side of your screen shows in orange, the orange is the R3 zoning district. We have also added an overlay of the National Register historic districts on top of that, and you will see why when we get to the proposed building orientation standards. The current R3 zone permits a range of housing types. So single dwelling with accessory dwelling unit, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, townhouses. And the difference between those housing types is that a duplex, triplex, quadruplex, or townhouse, you need to meet minimum lot area requirements to do that. So whereas with a single dwelling, there's no minimum lot area requirement. So if you have a 1,000 square foot lot and you want to build a single dwelling and an accessory dwelling unit, that is permitted by right. Every other use type includes that minimum lot area requirement. One of the things that we started to look at, and initially, and I think this is why we were open to this concept, is if you can do a single dwelling unit and accessory dwelling unit, you can have 2 units. So going to a duplex makes sense. The one thing that we looked at is it does potentially open the door to additional scale because with an accessory dwelling unit, you are capped on size. We have size limits. It cannot be, I want to, and I may get this wrong, so I'll ask any of my staff that are here, but I believe it's no more than 50% of the gross floor area of the principal building, or 1,200 square feet. So if you think of that, when you have a duplex, if you have a 2,400 square foot home, you can build a 2,400, you're now looking at 4,800 square feet. So there is a measurable difference in scale that you could potentially do under the original proposal. So just to run through the other two amendments first, the first proposal, and this was something staff had identified and requested the applicant include in the last amendment, was to replace the term mixed use with mixed use. We thought that was a rather obvious typographical error that we should correct. The second one deals with the rear setback requirements. And so what you'll see on your screen is an example of what happens with the current rear setback requirements, which are 15 feet. So on that left graphic, you will see lots that extend basically from a street to an alleyway. And so there's a 15-foot rear setback along that alleyway because that is the rear lot. In the middle of that diagram, you will see lots that actually front on that alleyway. And I will say, these are lots that are existing. You cannot create new lots that only have alley frontage. You have to have frontage on a street today. We would not allow you to create these lots today. But one of the things that we noticed in doing this is that those lots only have a 10-foot, because it's a front yard for them, they're only set back 10 feet from that alley. And so the proposal, and this again came initially from the applicant, was to change that rear yard setback to 10 feet, which would address that alignment along alleyways and basically ensure that you don't have kind of things going in and out, not because it's the way people wanted, but because they have no choice but to set something back 15 feet because it's considered a rear yard instead of a front yard. And so respecting that rhythm of the street through setbacks was the purpose of this amendment. And again, no changes from what you saw last time. We're just reiterating this. So the proposed amendment, and this is where, as I mentioned, the changes, is that instead of eliminating the minimum lot area, we are proposing an incentive approach whereby if you have a 4,000 square foot lot, you can build a duplex today, and you can continue to build a duplex with no building orientation requirements whatsoever. That's what you can do under current code. No changes are proposed to that. What we are proposing is that for lots that are basically between 2,500 square feet and 4,000 square feet, so if you're shy of 4,000, that you would have the opportunity to build a duplex if you met certain orientation standards. And they're really designed and focused on the experience that someone would have walking down the street, again, focused on really trying to protect neighborhood character so that we're not introducing something that is of a much larger scale, that then does not fit into the neighborhood character because they choose to do a blank facade or they orient it to a different street than what most structures on the street are oriented to. So the proposed standards, standards that we are proposing with this, there are 4. The first one is that the facade is oriented to the primary street to be consistent with the block face. And so while the example that you see here is mid-block, think of a corner lot where all the lots on that street are fronting, and I'm just going to start picking blocks, 8th Street. All the lots on that block are fronting on 8th Street, but you're saying, no, I want to front on Nunn Street. I'm going to turn my house so that it doesn't have that same orientation. Our recommendation is that we be consistent if you're doing a duplex. And that is depicted by the blue shaded area, which, and I will note the letters in the diagram do correspond to the proposed standards. B, which is shown in yellow, is that you have an entrance facing the street. So we're not saying that you have to have both entrances facing the street, just an entrance facing the primary street. C, having a front porch of at least 8 feet deep and 50% of the width of the front facade. And that is shown in, sorry, I'm getting my colors mixed up here, but B is, I believe, yellow. So C may have been a light orange there. And the last standard, and this is why I showed you the map earlier that has the National Register District, would only apply to properties that fall within a National Register District, would requirement that you have windows or glazing, so it could be transparency as part of your primary entrance, equivalent to at least 25% of the front facade. The reason that we have limited that to the National Register Districts only go back to state statutes. And the current statutes, and our attorney will probably correct me if I get this wrong, but I believe it's 160D-702, has some provisions that essentially say municipalities cannot regulate or building design elements unless the property is located within a local historic district or a National Register historic district. It does go on to define what what is considered to be a building design element. And so when we worked with our attorneys on this, they felt the windows were more of a building design element that would be regulated by that section of statute, and therefore we needed to limit our applicability of this to the National Register District. In terms of the porches are mentioned in terms, I believe it's style and materials. And so that was seen as being a porch as being again, a building orientation feature. One of the reasons that we are recommending it is because it is something that is very typical of many of the homes downtown. If you look at most of the housing types we have, they typically have a front porch. And so the dimensional requirements actually we pulled from our historic district design standards because, and I will say we took all of these from those standards as a baseline. They have a lot more standards. They get into roof styles, materials, everything else. We felt that these were basic building orientation defining characteristics that would help some of these new duplexes that may be of a larger scale better fit into the existing built environment. So what you do see is an exception that we did add because one of the things that we were hoping, and I think we talked about at the October meeting, is that we are really hoping that you will see existing dwellings converted, that this is not just a new construction phenomenon, that, you know, by reducing these lot standards, you potentially will see existing single dwellings that could then be converted into duplexes. And so our recommendation, not wanting to make that more difficult for anyone who has an existing dwelling, is to say that the C and D, so the front porch and the window and glazing requirements, would not apply to houses that are existing as of January 6, 2026. What is in red is something that our zoning administrator caught in the last few days, which was we really needed to add or permitted as of January 6, 2026, so that we didn't have, if there were any structures that had been permitted by New Hanover County, that they were not in a no man's land of, they don't exist, but they were permitted under the existing code, which they would be allowed to be there, but we didn't want to create any type of confusion there. So that we will, if you recommend approval tonight, our recommendation is that we would amend this language to say existing or permitted as of January 6, 2026, to make sure that we're covering those houses that are already in the design review process. In terms of the orientation standards, you know, one of the things that we expect is, well, what happens if I want to build a contemporary dwelling that does not typically have a front porch, that may use different types of articulation? Because of the limitations that we have in addressing what are more, I would say, building design elements as opposed to building orientation elements, we are reluctant, I would say, and are concerned about trying to add some of those standards and build them into the actual language. But what we can say is that if someone comes in and says, I don't want to meet those standards, I have a different way of how I can address the orientation requirements that are identified, it would not be a request, that would not be a variance that would go through the standard Board of Adjustment process where you have to meet a hardship, because quite frankly, if you're building new construction, I think everyone here is familiar with the Board of Adjustment standards that say it cannot be self-created. So it might be very hard to say, why can you not design this to meet these standards? But understanding that the code already has provisions for these types of standards and requirements that go to the Design Adjustment Committee. And the Design Adjustment Committee has different standards for review when they're looking at waiver and adjustment requests for things that deal with more of these design elements. And so those unnecessary hardship is one of the criteria that they can use to approve a waiver or adjustment. But the standards that you see on your screen, the Design Adjustment Committee needs to find that the request meets one or more of the following. So it can be an unnecessary hardship. It can be the adjustment would meet the intent of the standards requested for adjustment. So when you talk about design elements and why we have orientation standards, somebody may come in with a different design that says, I am addressing the orientation standards you're trying to create. I'm just doing it a different way. I don't want to do that through a front porch. I want to do that through a stoop. I want to do it through this different mechanism. An adjustment that conforms to adopted plans and design manuals is another finding they could make. That it would not seriously injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, and that the character of the adjustment would be in harmony with the area in which the subject property is located. So looking at that is how we would approach any types of, anyone coming in saying, I want to do the orientation, but I want to do it a different way. So in closing, in reviewing this, staff does find that this proposal would increase the housing options while preserving key elements that are contributing to the existing neighborhood development pattern. It would reduce a significant barrier to missing middle housing, encourage housing near services where infrastructure already exists, and we believe the proposal is generally consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Painter. Well, why don't we start at the end? Commissioner Kofer, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, a couple questions. One, does the minimum lot width remain in play?
The only lot dimension we are changing is the lot area. So
Okay.
there are no changes, and if you'll bear with me, I believe we actually, here are the minimum requirements, and there is actually, so the minimum lot width of 33 feet remains.
In play?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Because when we start talking about 2,500 square feet, I mentally just do the 25 times 100 and start thinking that we're going less width, but that's great. With the language that's being created for the building orientation, where does that language get inserted? I mean, where do we find that next? Is it in section 18? Is that something?
It will still be in section 18, and I apologize, I did not write that, include that section number on my presentation, so if you'll bear with me. There is a section, it's actually single dwellings, and so there are many standards, and Commissioner Collier is trying to mime it to me, but if you'd like to let me know.
I think you're looking for 1828.
It is 1828, and then it's a subsection of that, so it comes after the table.
Okay, it comes after the table. And so when you mention the Design Adjustment Committee and waivers, that language will be inserted in that section after the table, and if you...
It actually does not need to be, the language on waivers is already existing under the Design Adjustment Committee in the administrative provisions of the code.
Right.
That specifies that that they have jurisdiction over these types of standards and in requests for adjustments to these types of standards. So no
okay.
additional language was needed.
So this language, A through D, if you needed an adjustment, you would go to the DAC.
Correct.
That's the process, okay. What about the orientation to the primary street? Does that cover or encompass alley fronting lots?
If you have a lot that is an existing lot that is fronting on the alley, then yes, that's where your frontage would be.
That's your
because that would-
primary street.
That would be your primary street because you do not have frontage on another street. If you have a through lot that is, again, fronting on 8th Street with a rear alley, your primary frontage is going to be 8th Street or the primary street, not the alley.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Painter.
Commissioner Collier?
Ms. Painter, so I have two questions. One is, and this may be silly, so on your 8th Street example, if the house is existing, already facing 8th Street, so it generally meets the criteria of the facade. If someone wanted, they're going to turn it into a duplex, so now you've got a front door, can you have another door facing
Yes.
the cross street?
Yep.
You can,
Yeah.
without
It's-
having to do all of this?
All we're saying is that you need to have an entrance facing the primary
Okay,
street.
good, good.
Yep.
And if they build a new townhome on a 4,000 square foot lot, they could make it an L and have fronts facing each street if they chose to?
So if they're doing just to be clear, we're only speaking about duplexes this evening. And if they're building on a 4,000 square foot lot, none of these standards apply. Because these standards only apply if you're asking to build do a duplex on a lot of less than 4,000 square feet.
Okay.
If you are on 4,000 square feet,
A different set of rules,
it's
right?
because it's already permitted today with no building orientation requirements. We've already said you can do a duplex, and we are not going to, we have no orientation standards for those.
Okay. Will you bring the DAC statements up again? Short of a little bit of wording, these generally follow the Board of Adjustment words.
I will say they're paraphrased one. I did not
Correct.
direct
They are
quote.
paraphrased.
But I would say the difference with the Board of Adjustment is the Board of Adjustment has 4 findings they have to make.
Correct.
And they have to make all 4. And hardship is one of those. The difference with the Design Adjustment Committee is requests are deemed reasonable if they are found to meet one or more of those standards. So if you can prove a hardship, that's great, but you don't have to, because you can, as long as you meet one of those standards, that would be deemed reasonable by the Board of Adjustment. They are not bound by the same requirements that you have to meet all of those standards. They only have to meet one.
So you know that it's number 2 is going to be the one that's used at every single meeting, right? Because the hardship can't be met. Conform to adopted plans, maybe if there's a plan already in place, a small area plan of some sort. Injuring the value, they're not going to hit that one. I don't know that there need to be this many findings, I guess. And maybe it's giving the choice so that they've got a bigger boilerplate to play with.
Well, this is, again, we're not adding these. These are the standards that exist today.
In the DAC?
For the DAC to review any type of waiver or adjustment to this type of standard.
Okay.
So the DAC has two areas of jurisdiction. One is the technical standards and specifications. And so for waivers and adjustment to the technical standards, the Land Development Code identifies a set of criteria that they need to find. And again, they lay out what those are. These are specific to these types of elements that fall under their jurisdiction as well, because this is not something that is dimensional, like I want to reduce a setback requirement. That goes to the Board of Adjustment. But when you start talking about these types of orientation standards or other building design elements, that's where the DAC has jurisdiction, and where these are again, paraphrased, these are the standards that they have to apply, and they need to find one or more of these.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize, I've been to the DAC many times, but it's always on the technical side. I've never seen this list.
Yeah.
I haven't looked for it because
No,
I haven't had the need. So.
And I would say that the vast majority of what that committee deals with is adjustments to the engineering technical standards and
Right.
specifications, like the 500, 800-foot rule.
Have we removed that one yet?
That is a question for another day. I do
Understood.
not have an answer to that. I know they are working on updates.
I am well in support of this entire thing, because I like the way we're presenting it in the R3. We need something like that, and I was supporting it in October, and I'd support it today. But I'm glad you clarified these for me. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Commissioner Adams?
Can you go back to your slide that had the overlay with the register districts and the R3 lots? So do you have an idea what percentage that overlap or overlay happens, if you had to guess, with all the R3 lots?
If I had to guess, and I apologize, that is not a number that I had our GIS analyst run. It looks to me to be probably about probably 50 to 70. It's tough because we have some large areas like Love Grove that are
So
are
plus or minus
outside.
half?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that I have a question about, this slide says National Register districts. The red line version of your chapter 1828 says National Register historic districts.
National Register Historic Districts is the proper term. So this is something we can correct with our GIS analyst. It's the technical term is a National Register Historic District.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that clarification that there wasn't two types of registered districts.
No, there's National Register districts or National Register Historic Districts, which are designated, but there are no design standards that are applied to those. And then you have local historic districts. So if you look on that map, they're actually just shaded in blue because they fall within the National Register Historic District. But you'll see HD, HDR, and there might be an HDMU in there somewhere. Those are local historic districts. So if you own property in those districts, any exterior alteration requires approval by the Historic District Commission pursuant to very specific design standards.
Well, I guess where I'm getting confused is, just take the central business district block here. That's shaded in blue, but that's not a National Historic Register district.
It is. So anything that is shaded in blue on this map is part of the National Register Historic District, but the underlying zoning is what determines whether or not you are part of a local district that currently requires.
So the city overlays are what go beyond that.
So the city, because essentially what the city has done is we have adopted smaller local historic districts that are controlled by the Historic District Commission. And I will say that it's not shown on this map. We also have what are called historic district overlays, one of which is over part of the CBD. The other one, there's another one that is over the Carolina Place, Westbrook, Ardmore area. And if you are located within a historic district overlay, you still have the design standards from the Historic District Commission. The difference is they only regulate what can be seen from the street in those overlay districts. They do not regulate every facade.
But what you're proposing as an incentive goes beyond the overlay districts and applies.
Because it is, there are no overlay districts currently for the R3 district. We don't have any we do not have any local historic district overlays for the R3 district. What we are proposing is for those areas of the R3, those properties which are located within a National Register Historic District, that they would have that additional building orientation standard of the glazing. And again, looking at that has been working in consultation with our attorneys because they believe that was something that fell under the building design elements portion of the statutes, which say you cannot apply building design element requirements to 1, 2, 3, or 4 unit buildings unless they are within a local or National Register Historic District.
We'll come back to this later because
Okay.
I have other questions about that related to
Okay.
item C. But there's another semantic question I have. In your presentation here, you talk about, you reference an entrance versus, again, the strike-through or the modified text amendment is a primary entrance. So to me, as a designer, there's an interpretive difference between a entrance or an entrance and a primary entrance. So can you clarify that?
Yes, and I will apologize that it should have said a primary entrance. I had primary street, I missed the second primary in that sentence, and that you are correct. It is proposed as being a primary entrance.
Okay, that's all for now.
Commissioner Pollak?
Linda, can we focus on process a minute? So for the record, I want to make sure I have it right. If you go to your, fast forward a couple charts, back one.
Okay.
Go
Go-
back.
go- oh, sorry,
I'm
back.
sorry, yeah, right there. Go the other way.
Okay.
No, it's,
The standards.
thank you. It's the next, there you go. Process-wise, for folks watching on TV, and I know there are some, what we're doing here tonight is basically we're setting a set of rules for some specific situations in R3. So once those rules are set and then adopted by city council, none, you know, if somebody's building a duplex looking for a variance, or that's never gonna come here. That's gonna go to, because it's within the R, it would be within the R3, you know, set of definitions and rules and of
So-
operation. Does that am I making sense?
That it wouldn't come to you as the planning commission?
Yeah,
Yeah, if this is adopted by city council, just as you can build a duplex on a 4,000 square foot lot today, what you get your building permit, we do zoning approval, as long as you meet the 4,000 square foot lot setbacks, lot width, you will get a permit. In this case, what we are proposing to do is to add an option that says if you have a lot that's not 4,000 square feet, but is at least 2,500 square feet, you now have the option of doing a duplex if you meet these requirements. If you would like to request a waiver or adjustment to one of those building orientation requirements, you would go before the Design Adjustment Committee. That is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing.
again, but it's not a zoning change. We're
It
setting.
is not a zoning
We're
change.
setting rules.
Correct.
Some set of rules for the R3 district, and at that point, move forward. The second observation is, and it's the same thing I struggled with when I was chairing the Board of Adjustment, and it's this term unnecessary hardship. I mean, that, you know, that's probably the thing we spent most of the time on, is what defines a hardship, what defines unnecessary, and the burden thereof. And I notice you don't have the exact same 4 findings of fact.
Correct. And
Okay.
again, these were paraphrased. There's more specific language, but these capture the gist of what the standards are. But the Board of Adjustment has to make 4 findings, including that unnecessary hardship that was not self-created. The Design Adjustment Committee for these types of adjustments has to find at least one of these requirements. So they do not have to find an unnecessary hardship. That's an option that
It is,
someone
yeah.
could potentially bring in. So for example, as we were working on this, you'll remember that we proposed an exemption for existing homes. And we had a draft at one point that did not have that exemption in. Which would mean that if you had an existing building or a building that had been permitted prior to these rules, and you said, well, I want to turn that into a duplex, you would have needed to go to the Board of the Design Adjustment Committee to get a waiver for not having a porch. And we looked at that and said, while porches are the predominant characteristic that you know, one of the predominant characteristics we see in our downtown neighborhoods, it's not universal. And telling someone who has, for example, and forgive me if I'm wrong for the architects in the audience and on the commission if I get my styles wrong, but if you have a Tudor house and a Tudor house doesn't have a porch typically with it, then telling you to go to the Board of Adjustment to get, or not the Board of Adjustment, I'm sorry, the Design Adjustment Committee, that would be an unnecessary hardship of saying, I have a Tudor house that was built in 1926 and it does not have a porch, and you're telling me that I have to add a porch in order to be able to convert this to a duplex. So one of the reasons, again, that would be an example. We actually tried to take that out by adding the exemption and saying, if a dwelling is existing, or a building is existing, or if it was permitted prior to the adoption of this by City Council, it would not be subject to that, the porch or the transparency requirements.
The only other question I have, and it's an observation more than anything else, is the bullet that says, the adjustment would not seriously injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. That almost, I hate to use the analogy, but I will, that almost sounds like the burden of proof to prove that one way or the other comes right out of the special use process that we spent quite a bit of time on, earlier. How would, from your experience, and, how would the DAC determine that? What would be the burden of proof to say yea or nay?
I think to your point, you're looking at evidence at that point, when you talk, and you're correct that when you talk about property values, and I'll ask our attorney to interject if I'm incorrect in this, but I believe the statutes have said that if you want to talk property value, you need to be an expert. So it's not something that I can come in and say, I think this is going to hurt my property value.
Right.
You actually need to produce expert testimony.
Much like the special use permit
Correct.
process.
But
You bring-
again, this is not you have to meet all of these.
I get it.
You have to meet one. And
Okay.
so if you choose to come in and say, that's the one I want to meet, then you're going to need to provide evidence for that.
Okay.
but you also have a range of other options to choose from.
Yeah, my observation only says that that'd be a very hard discussion without a licensed appraiser or
Yeah.
a professional in that. So, okay, thanks, Linda.
Commissioner Woodruff?
Just real quick, the design committee, which I'm not familiar with, that has not come up in my tenure here. I'm just curious, though, is it like, the safety valve for both the applicant to get some change, but it's also a safety valve for the planning department so that they don't go wild and crazy?
So it provides a mechanism for someone to ask for adjustments to the standards that they're in. Either, again, their jurisdiction is limited to kind of these types of more design element standards and technical standards and specifications. And I think the reason many of the projects that you have with conditional districts actually do go through the design adjustment committee process. It's just more typically for our technical standards. So as Commissioner Collier mentioned, it can be driveway dimensions, it can be driveway, how far, what's the distance for driveway offset, sidewalk, street and right-of-way specifications. So there are projects that you have seen that have gone through that process. It is a staff committee, so that is a difference between the Board of Adjustment, your commission, the Historic Preservation Commission. This is a committee made up of city staff members and partner agency staff members that have expertise. So for example, and again, I'm going to ask, we actually have a member here, so I'm going to ask him to correct me if I miss anyone. But we have engineering, traffic engineering, the fire marshal, Cape Fear Public Utility Authorities, and the planning department as representatives. And he's given me the 2 thumbs up that I got all of them. So that they are looking at it. And I think the reason that it really is looking at technical standards, and even the design from a technical point of view, it is more of a technical standard than it is a dimensional standard, which would go to the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
And that last question helped me with one of my questions, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And the glazing, why is that one thing that they have to meet? I mean, who's setting those standards?
So I will tell you, the source that we used for this, when we sat down and said, okay, what are basic standards we can look at that will address concerns about how something is experienced along the street by people in the neighborhood. And so to be frank, we went to the Historic District design guidelines and said, well, what did they have? And I will tell you, they had a much longer list that dealt with materials and roofs and everything under the sun and a lot of different standards. And we said, but these are some of the basic ones. And the idea of having glazing and having fenestration so that you don't have someone building a blank wall facing the street or a blank wall with a few very small windows, which again does not fit in to the predominant pattern of the neighborhood. It was seen as something, okay, you need to put windows in. This may be asking you to do a little bit more than what you have to do to meet a building code requirement, for example. But it's something that will help preserve the character of the neighborhood while accommodating the additional units and additional scale.
What's the level of drawings that'll be, coming from River Lights, it was the first time that you saw so many mixes of homes, and I know River Bluffs has that too. But it was a whole different mindset. That's not the historic district. But so what level will someone need to take their drawings to get approval?
So for these, it's just going to be showing us that this is a basic elevation that shows us your windows and doors, that we know which portion of your windows and doors are glazing so that we can calculate that and say, yes, that's 25% of your facade. And that you have a porch that on your site plan is 8 feet deep and at least 50% of the width of your facade. So this is not intended to be what we look at, for example, for historic preservation design review, where we are like, oh, we need very detailed elevations and you need to dimension every element, and we're going to please submit your window type to us and tell us what your window is constructed of and who the manufacturer is. This is show us your elevation, so that we can do that calculation and say, yes, you have 25% glazing, and there would probably be a condition add that says, and it can't be, I think it was, I did not add it on the slide, but I think there's something about essentially not having it be opaque, like that it actually needs to be a certain minimum transparency. And so just, quite frankly.
That's a historic thing? I mean, I don't.
It is.
Okay.
Like, but again, just, and that, to me, we're not gonna be asking you to submit your window samples to us. Tell us, put a note on your plans that says, these will meet this standard.
I have one last question. So if you've got a dwelling and it may have all kind of issues with it, and you want to go back and do two, do both dwellings just need to meet the criteria you're talking about?
So if you
demoed another building.
If you demo the building, if you have an existing building and you choose to demolish that and build new, then you are subject to all of the standards, unless you are outside of the National Register District, in which case you don't have to do the glazing. If you have an existing building that you're keeping and you say, just want to convert this, then the only thing we're looking for at that point is that your facade is oriented to the primary street and that you have a primary entrance facing the primary street. And then the porch and the glazing, you would be exempt from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a couple questions and then see if any the commissioners have any follow-up. What's the intent of this amendment?
The intent of the
amendment.
The overall proposed amendment?
What's the big picture intent?
So I think the intent of the overall amendment is the same as what the original amendment was asking for, which was to start removing barriers to missing middle housing. And
Okay, hard stop. Okay. So in your comments, you made reference to a concern about scale. And I don't want to misquote you, but I was wondering if you could give us some examples. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but the perception I got was that there was a fear of someone coming in with something that would just be totally out of whack, for lack of to use a technical term.
I think it's the idea that currently, while you have no minimum lot size requirement, no minimum lot area requirement for a single dwelling and accessory dwelling unit, that accessory dwelling unit does have size limitations. So, but when you start looking at a duplex if you look, for example, duplex on 4,000 square feet, if you want to build a 6,000 square foot duplex and stack that on a 4,000 square foot lot, as long as you meet the setback requirements, you can do that. And so one of the concerns was the smaller we make that lot, and without any limitations on what the size of that building is going to be, we're introducing potentially a new scale. People may come in and be the same scale as their neighboring property owners, but understanding that in opening the door to a duplex, which has no limitation on the size of those units, and saying you can do that on much smaller lots, then how can we ensure that building, I will say, we discussed whether or not we wanted to put height limitations in. We purposely did not do that. Because the reality is you can be on a block that has all single-story structures, but every single one of those single-story structures has the ability tomorrow to come in and add a second story and go up to 35 feet in height. So we did not think it was appropriate to start saying you need to be the same scale as everything around you, because cities evolve, buildings evolve, blocks evolve, and they can get larger. What we were looking for, again, was ensuring that these new structures fit in terms of the overall development pattern of the block face.
So, and just from my perspective, please understand that all my questions are based on the reason I asked you the first question, which is to remove barriers. And so I think that's what my questions are about, is are we creating too many of those barriers? The concern I have, and I understand your point about height, I'm not sure, I mean, there are height restrictions, and that is one of the items that, Mr. Attorney, I believe that the state statute allows us to regulate. You're nodding, I'll take that as a yes.
That would be correct.
Yeah. So that, I'm not sure I fully understand the concern about it. The other thing is I understand there's this process to go through DAC, but it's kind of like, you know, my famous argument about conditional districts where people have to come back to add another bay onto their maintenance shop. That's cost and time, which is, to me, creating more of a barrier to the ultimate goal of what this is trying to achieve. So that's a concern. And we talked about this for the rest of you during the agenda review. One of the two best daughters in the world that I have lives in Charleston, and she lives in a duplex, 2-story. She's downstairs, one's upstairs. The front of it's beautiful, bay window, and there's a door, and it looks like a front door. But when you go in that door, there's 2 long porches that run down the side. The upstairs folks use the stairs that are on that porch, but she has the whole downstairs porch. They have the upstairs. I think the inclusion of a 50% front coverage porch, to me, creates a lot of problems. And I'm not sure how the building that she lives in doesn't meet the same criteria. And if you tell me it would, based on that second DAC criteria that Commissioner Collier, I think, accurately said would be the most popular one, why do we want to make people go through that?
I think it really comes back to, and again, I'm gonna ask our attorney to feel free to jump in and correct me when I go off, if I go off course here, but I think it comes back to what we have the ability through statute to say we can do building orientation. When we start getting into other ways that you could potentially address that design intent, articulation, a bay window, a side porch, that is straying into building design elements that the legislature has said, no, you cannot prescribe those. You know, and I will say, we do look at this as this is an opt-in. We are not telling you have to do these. These only apply if you want to do a duplex on a lot smaller than what you can currently do it on today. If you have 4,000 square feet, you don't have to do any of this. You can go and build because that is what we have adopted and nothing is changing there. What we are doing is trying to open the door to additional opportunities for duplexes in the R3. And so one of the things I did fail to note in my presentation, and I apologize, was to just give you some context. So in the R3 district, there are 1,101 lots that are over 4,000 square feet presently, or 4,000 square feet or greater. Of those, about 113, or about 10%, are vacant. And so again, you have those lots today, you could come in and build a duplex on with absolutely no issue as long as you met setback requirements, minimum lot width, et cetera. There are about 846 lots, there are 846 lots between 2,500 square feet and 3,999 square feet, of which 72 are vacant. And I will also say the vacant is our best available data. I can't tell you that's 100% accurate, but again, it gives you about 9 or 10% of those lots. So with this amendment, we are opening the door to an additional almost 850 lots to put duplexes on. What we are asking is that in opening that door and providing that additional flexibility, that we recognize the context of that neighborhood and try and include some minimal protections to ensure that as we introduce those additional units and potentially larger scale units, that they are addressing the street in a way that is consistent with the overall neighborhood fabric and pattern.
Okay, last question from me, and then we'll go back for any follow-up. The B, which I believe Commissioner Adams pointed out there was an inconsistency, and you verified that what's in our package is the correct language. But again, just looking at the way it's written, and please tell me if I'm wrong, it says A, primary entrance shall be located on the front facade and face the associated primary street. It doesn't say both.
Correct.
Okay.
Because, yes, and again, another discussion that we had, we recognize you may have a corner lot, or even if you're not on a corner lot, you may not want to have both doors on your front facade. You may want to have, the second unit may be in the rear of your building, the door may be in the rear, it may be in the side. We were looking to have a primary entrance facing the primary street. If you want to have 2, you can do that. If you want to put one on another facade, you can do that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions? Commissioner Cofer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple. So I'm perplexed a little bit. Do we not have orientation standards in all of our districts?
No, we do not.
There's no frontage standards to define ingress, egress? Okay. Interesting.
You have lot frontage standards, but you do not, there's nothing that says you have to have a door facing the street. Like, if you want to put your front door on the side of your house right now, that's something you can do.
Okay. So I know this is addressing new construction, and there's 72 vacant parcels in that area. And it looks to me like a significant amount of R3 is either in the historic district or the overlay, one way or the other.
Well, it's in the National Register Historic District. So
Okay.
there are no local historic districts that apply to the R3 district.
Okay,
So there's no
overlays
Historic
here.
Preservation Commission review in the R3.
So this is the most restrictive, prescriptive historic district Wilmington has. The overlay is less.
So a local historic district like the HD or the HDR, that is the most restrictive because they look at every facade, your entire property, whether it can be seen from the street or not. In a historic district overlay, such as over the R7 in Carolina Ardmore, that is, they only look at things that can be viewed from the street.
Right.
So the National Register District basically identifies a cohesive area that have contributing resources that contribute to the character of that area. The only time there is any type of review done on structures in a National Register District is if there is state or federal funding, in which case particularly federal funding. For example, if we are doing a housing rehabilitation project that uses federal funding, it's called a Section 106 review, and we have to review what is being proposed to see if it is going to impact the contributing nature of that building. So that is the only time that in the R3 district, if you were in a National Register District, you would have any type of design review, and that's if there's state or federal funding going into your project.
Okay. And then with, the duplex, so there's going to be the premise or the concept, the overarching spirit of this would be to allow conversions of single family to, duplex. And what is the difference here when you're studying it as far as what defines a duplex versus an internal ADU?
It primarily size. So an ADU would have a size restriction that goes along with it, whereas a principal structure, or a duplex rather, would not have any size limitations. Your units could be the same size. You wouldn't have that requirement that one be 50% of the floor area.
But I guess what's the standard to say if I owned a home in an R3 right now with it's single family and I want to convert it to a duplex versus I would just want to convert it to an internal ADU? I mean, how?
The internal ADU, we'd be looking at the size of that internal ADU compared to the size of the home. Mm-hmm. So it basically, like, you could not split the floor area of the house in half unless you had a house no, you couldn't do that. So that is the driving nature of the difference between an internal ADU and a duplex, is basically saying we don't have any size area limitations.
Mm-hmm. Because in I think practically that's what this seems like. It's in some regards, if we're going to convert just an existing property, I don't see the big change between internal ADU and duplex unless I was building from scratch. Then it would be obvious. I stacked them or whatnot. But I know that area, most of it has it's sensitive with design, and I've seen in Wilmington where the code cycle changes from 2021, where you had, or the end of 2020 or 2021 when those took effect, where you had 20-foot front setbacks versus 30-foot front setbacks, and two houses that were built next to each other. The setback, I don't know, like you said, the experience of going down that street, it just seems off. It's the pattern gets off and the fabric, as you mentioned, changes.
And you do have the ability to use the setbacks, for front setbacks in that district, you do have the ability to look at that block face. And that, when you look at A, one of the things we are saying, when we say building, siting, and and again, this is, I missed this one because it didn't fit into the orientation standards, so I'm going to add this for you. The building, siting, and orientation shall be consistent with those of the primary block face. And that's intended to get at exactly what you said, where if you have a lot or a block face where everybody's at 20 feet, we want your house to be at 20 feet. We don't want you to arbitrarily set back 30 feet or bring it up to 15 feet. We want to see some consistency there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Pollock?
Linda, following up on Commissioner Lennon's, what is the intent of what we're talking about here? Is there a pent-up demand? I mean, I realize this will open up opportunities for additional, potential housing, to address potential housing needs, et cetera, but we approve this tonight, council approves this in January. Does this open up do we have a bunch of people that are gonna say, hey, yeah, great, or do we know that?
I don't know if it's a bunch of people, but I know the previous applicant was seeking this for specific lots
Right.
that they were seeking to develop.
So there is some demand?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. That's all I had.
Commissioner Adams?
Linda, when you were, I think, answering one of John's questions earlier, you talked about a variety of architectural elements that state statute you didn't feel like allowed you to regulate. So again, I'm curious why the porch as one of those things that is an architectural element somehow doesn't apply to those things, or why you again chose to use that and differentiate it differently or think about it differently than all the other things that you think the statute doesn't allow you to regulate.
Well, I think, again, we tried to look for things that we saw as being predominant characteristics in the neighborhoods, and porches are very typical. And so that was one that we identified as this is a way to, again, facilitate preserving that neighborhood pattern. In terms of why we think we can do a front porch versus saying you can do a front porch or a bay window or a side porch or something of that nature, is when you look at the limitations from statutes, it talks about what is considered to be a building design element, and they specifically call out, let me find this here, the style or materials of roof structures or porches. So in doing this, in working with our attorney's office, we did not specify style elements here. We did not specify materials. We just said we would like to see a front porch as a building orientation element. So by staying away from that, and again, the example of, for example, a bay window, the reason that's not here as an alternative is because that would be considered glazing, that would be considered a building design element, which the statutes are saying you should not be doing that when you are dealing with 1 through 4 unit buildings. And yes, I recognize that this is an interpretation and a fine line, and I believe our attorney is going to speak to that.
Has done an excellent job of explaining the criteria. There is a line where you cross, where you clearly are in building design elements, windows, that sort of thing, are spelled out. As she mentioned, the porches, there's a limit there in terms of style or materials of the porch. But again, the orientation, that sort of thing, we felt it was consistent. But beyond that, I do think you run the risk of getting into that building design category. I don't know if I explained it any clearer than she did or not. But we're dealing with statutory interpretation.
Commissioner Adams, was that your, Commissioner Collier?
Well, I know we're talking a lot about front porches, and I understand why. But I also agree with your statement of that is the character in that downtown area, that most houses have some level of a porch. My one question was, if it's an existing house you're converting to a townhouse, that's when these things start to come into play, correct? Or in some manner. I know there's other criteria, but if you have an existing house, maybe it doesn't have a front porch on it today.
So what we are proposing, if you have an existing house that does not have a front porch on it, then you would not have to add a front porch because your building would be existing as of the time of this was adopted. And so the proposal is to exempt those existing structures and structures that have already been permitted.
Okay, so, and I think Commissioner Lennon was asking about, it's a hardship on someone to put a porch. So I think that goes away. If you're existing, you didn't have to do it anyway. You would not have to do that.
Correct. This would only apply if you're doing new construction.
Okay, great. I agree. I don't have an issue with the porch, quite honestly, because I think we talk about new neighborhoods and the neighborhood feel and the character of the street, and the first thing we're going to talk about is having a front porch so you can sit out there and have coffee and talk to your neighbors. It will be the first sentence that the land planners put up when they start talking about it. So to me, in a downtown setting, particularly on lots that are 3,300 square feet, 4,000 square feet, I think the front porch is an element that we should encourage to be there, and I think I like the way that you've done it. It may not be perfect, but if the attorney believes that we are within the statute, I fully accept it. The glazing part, if it's only in the areas that's in the overlap zone, the kind of the blue shaded areas here, you know, everything in the historic district has been very much tied to multiple standards. I don't think that one additional standard in this particular case is a burden to folks in that area. The picture you've got there, I presume, where you talk about D, the two windows below it, the door and the, what is that, a transom above, is that what that's called?
Yes.
I presume that would meet the intent of 25%, correct?
Yeah.
And if we're talking about these things coming in at primarily a time of zoning review during a building permit from the county, you're looking at one house at a time. We're not talking about 4 city blocks in most cases, or a complete new development. So I do like what you've done. I can't say I like it as much as I liked it in October. I think October was more clean, but I understand your reasoning behind it. So I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Painter. This time we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this item? Asking once, asking twice. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this item? Anyone in opposition? Anyone at all? Ms. Bradshaw, is the email full with comments?
Nothing has been received.
Thank you very much. Seeing that we have no comments either way, and without objection, we will close the public hearing. And I apologize, I drew an arrow to start this way the first time, and now I'm going to start this way. Just thoughts, and then see what the wishes of the commission are.
I'm a little conflicted because we voted for this in October, and I'm very much not one of wanting to create additional restrictions. If somebody wanted to tear down that house and now is required to put a porch, if I'm in that area, I'm gonna want my porch or my outside time to be in the back. But in saying that, I voted in favor of the first time, and I'd want to see more development in that area. There's just a lot of things that are one street over that don't match what we're regulating, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodruff?
Just real quick, I don't have a problem with this. Obviously, the staff has decided there could be a problem. Who knows until it comes to be. I think it's good that they're working to keep a neighborhood in its appearance it's a small neighborhood, it's what it is already, no need to change it. So anyway, I don't have a problem. And like I say, it may not be the best, but I don't see any reason to say no.
Thank you. Commissioner Pollock?
Yeah, you know, it's a little puzzling that, and I agree with Commissioner Jones, that, you know, we approved something in October, we're back here again. So from a process standpoint, that's always interesting, but having said that, you know, I'm prepared to make an amendment to support it. So.
Okay. Commissioner Adams?
I always advocate for exemplary design, but I mean, again, I also am of the mindset that we need to have design flexibility where it's important. And I am conflicted by basically item C. I mean, the block face consistency makes sense for scale conformance. Entrances facing the street is about activating the street. I understand that. Can sort of get my head around windows in the National Register districts, but the specificity of what is talked about for this front porch is where I get hung up. And you know, Commissioner Lennon also mentioned this, that yeah, there's a safety valve about going to the Design Adjustment Committee, but is that just an unnecessary sort of hardship for someone that doesn't want a porch that's 8 feet deep? Because there's a lot of great porches that can be on the house and make it fit into the context that don't meet this hyper-specific set of guidelines. So that's the part where I'm getting hung up. I don't know, and I agree with what you said, Richard, that porches are great elements, but they can be done in a lot of different ways that's not this specific. And if someone chooses to deviate from that, that's less than this or different than this, should we force them to go to the Design Adjustment Committee? I don't know that I necessarily agree that they should be able, you know, or have to do that. So I'm curious what thoughts are about, in lieu of, you know, making an amendment to strike item C from an orientation standard, to at least take away some of the specificity of it if we think as a residential urban element, a porch is something that, again, incentivizes and makes the fabric better. So that's sort of where I am right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Collier?
And I don't tend to disagree with Danny on anything architecture, so I won't propose to tonight either. I do like the porches, and I don't think it's an onerous thing. I understand what you're saying about it is maybe too specific, and they may have to go to DAC to get something modified. But there are so many other things in our code that push every month folks to DAC for the most minute details, but it's the way the code's written. And you can't fix all of that. So if we take it and we eliminate it and we say, well, you don't have to have a depth. I don't think a front porch that's 12 inches wide that really only gets the first step down meets any intent of a porch. So, you know, is it 6 feet, is it 8 feet? That's in the eye of the person, I agree. I support the porch. 50% of the width, I would rather say 100%, but I know that's not realistic in most cases. So I'm fine with what's here. Again, I liked it written better in October without any of this stuff, but I understand the reasoning behind it, and I thank you for keeping the characters of the downtown area. That's where we're talking about putting it, and there's really not any other R3 districts in town. And yes, somebody mentioned it's something maybe different one street over. Again, that's one of those things that happens in every jurisdiction and every zoning place. We have that occurring, and we can't solve all those at one time, but we can solve the issue of the housing in the middle that we needed. And if there are folks that can use something like this to bring some of that missing middle housing, I'm all about it. And I don't think they're going to have an issue with a front porch. They might, but if they do, they'll go to DAC like everybody else does. So I'm fully in support of it. Thank you.
Commissioner Cofer?
Yes, thank you. I think that I missed the last meeting when this case was in front of the Planning Commission, but was able to read the minutes. I mean, I do have experience with applicant-driven amendments to the LDC and UDOs and whatnot, and usually those applicant-driven amendments are very site-specific to whatever their client's, project sits. And sometimes, you do have to sit back and look at the 35,000-foot view and say, what are these far-reaching implications that could affect all of the district? And I think I applaud staff for taking that into account, because this is an extremely hypersensitive area that does need that 35,000-foot view. I'm shocked that all districts don't have some level of orientation to define frontage and to say this is ingress and egress, but so be it. And this is a the at least minimum 50% of this R3 district is highly regulated by, historic, and it's not overlay, it's just the National Historic Registry or whatever that nomenclature is. So I support this change. I mean, I would say, though, that like Commissioner Collier, I'm going to defer to Commissioner Adams if C needs to be stricken, and shame on me, I have not walked the R3 before tonight to see, the 850 houses that are there today, do they have porches that are at least 50% or 100% of their house facade width? Maybe they, but I suspect that the staff has done their job because of overanalyzing this to say that, these properties that come in to fit the fabric of this particular district need some level of porch. So the only thing I would be torn between is, staff recommendation for C and then Commissioner Adams saying we might not want to have C. Otherwise, I'm in favor of it.
Commissioner Adams?
Can you go back to the criteria for the Design Adjustment Committee slide for a second? And I think, Richard, I'm glad you brought this up. This is applicability to only one of these in this committee, right? So there is a level of flexibility and subjectivity that might be good in this compared to the other quasi-judicial, formats. So that does give me a little bit more comfort in the specificity of this. So I'm glad that you brought this up about the common nature of going before this for any litany of technical issues. Okay.
Yep, Commissioner Woodruff.
I'm usually the last to comment at this stage, but I'm just curious. I mean, I understand completely the idea of the specificity on this porch thing. I mean, that's a fairly big thing. I completely agree with Richard because I like porches too. What if we take out the specificity and you just read as you took away the language I was just going to quote that was bad, but it just says a front porch. Flip back to where we were with down at the bottom. That would be in harmony with the area in which the subject property is located. That's just my thought.
Well, I'm no lawyer. I don't know why everybody's looking at me. Would you like to opine on that?
I think one of the concerns that's been expressed is just beauty in the eye of the beholder and subjectivity in something, and that to me would be less certain for someone, for that determination to be governed by that criteria.
Just because I like to be devil's advocate, I think there's one thing I didn't think about until we were sitting up here talking about it. Could you go back to the slide with the picture of the house? So hypothetically, I could take that porch roof off and put a 8-foot deep slab of concrete on the ground with no railings, no roof, nothing, and say, there's your porch. It's a porch, right?
Without a roof?
Yeah.
It's a stoop.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was there any, okay. From my perspective, I think several of us have said it, and I'm struggling too. had absolutely no qualms in October, have a really big qualm about item C, feel better about the DAC being different in terms of meeting the criteria or the standard. My request would be, if we recommend approval, that it be communicated in staff's report to council that there was a lot of angst about this. I don't know how much they'll read in anticipation of it. Because frankly, I think, I understand the rationale behind porches, but to me, I still think it okay, style. To me, a 50% coverage is a style of porch. 50% front coverage. And as somebody who deals with this on a large scale, I mean, we ran out of plans that looked good with 50% coverage on the front. And so redid them to understand we were missing out on a lot of potential design criteria. So I just, and I know DAC is not that hard, but I think, again, how long does it take to get on the docket for that? Is it like planning commission? Do you have to be a couple months ahead of time?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. So that would be identified at their first arguably their first sit down with planning, Linda, they would.
If they came in for if they came and talked to us, if they had questions, then we would identify what would be looking for in a building permit. So if that's something that they did not want to do, they would be coming before they submit. If someone didn't understand, didn't look at the requirements, and just submitted for a building permit, and we caught it during that process, we would then essentially, I'm not sure what the proper term is in the permitting system, but basically say, no, you are not compliant with zoning. You need to go and get an adjustment from the board, from the design adjustment committee, if you want to proceed with this design, or you can change your design to comply with the requirements, and then it would be at their discretion which direction they wanted to go.
Okay, and then the last thing I'll say is just I still am not sure I understand what motivated this change, because I'm not sure I understand the concern about the scale argument, but that's just food for thought. Commissioner Pollock.
I'm going to make a suggestion for all of us to consider. Obviously, this is a change to rules and regs rules and regs in the R3 district, pertinent to this set of situations. I'm going to make a suggestion that we go ahead and adopt what's here with the provision that says, because everybody's articulated, but what about this, what about that, very legitimate concerns. And, plug into the verbiage, I'll just say like a 90-day look back, because we're not sure how big the pent-up demand is. I mean, it obviously opens up opportunity for additional housing. It kind of goes in concert with a phrase I've always used is you can't expect what you don't inspect. And so if we put this language out there we've got some moderate specificity, we've got some areas that are look to be pretty specific. An option is to just move ahead with what's being presented here, and then have the team come back in April and say, this is what we've seen on this, and maybe help us determine, are we being too specific or too restrictive, or not open, not open enough.
Commissioner Adams.
Well, I mean, the LDC is a living, evolving document anyway, right? So part of me thinks that if these prescriptions are left in now, it can evolve and change later depending on what we see, right? So it may not be time dependent, but I think it also, if these things encounter headwinds that aren't incentivizing this like we think, it's easier for these to have less of these and more of these in the future, I think.
And I'll look to staff to confirm this, and we can take out these barriers, but we can't put them back in.
Ms. Painter says yes.
Ms. Painter said yes. Thank you. Anybody else? What are the wishes of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion for approval of item number 1.
With that amendment, just say the primary facade oriented to the primary street.
That's in these notes. Yeah, it is. Sorry, excuse me one moment. Here. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for approval of item number 1, which is LDC 31225. It's the Land Development Code Amendment to modify dimensional standards and duplex design within the R3 zoning district. I find that this request, or we find that this request is reasonable and consistent with the objectives and the policies of the city of Wilmington, specifically the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable and in the public interest because the proposed amendment is consistent with plan policies that encourage compatible, compact, efficient development and a diversity of housing types in areas with convenient access to goods, services, and job opportunities. So my recommendation for approval incorporates the amendments made by the staff that were in our package this evening.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Collier, seconded by Commissioner Pollock. We will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Kofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Collier?
Aye.
Commissioner Adams?
Yay?
Commissioner Pollock?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodruff?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank everybody for their thoughtful work on that. That was a lot. I apologize, I made a mistake before and jumped ahead to old business. Is there any old business from anybody? Any new business? I believe, Ms. Bradshaw, do we need to approve our calendar? Okay. Everybody should have a copy of the Planning Commission calendar for the coming year. Do I need to take a vote on that? Yep. Could I get a motion to approve the schedule?
I'll make a motion that we approve the schedule as presented.
Commissioner Pollock has made the motion. Commissioner Jones has seconded. Commissioner Jones?
Yes, she seconded it. I heard it.
Yes, I did.
It's the vote now.
Yay.
Yay.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So I have to practice that a little bit. Any new business? Commissioner Pollock?
Yeah, under the items from commission, I just wanted to kind of put a bug in everybody's ear. In October, if you remember, we met with, I was going to say the then city council, which we now have a new city council. And I suspect it'll probably sometime in the first quarter or first trimester, we'll probably need to have another planning session with the city council. But my question really, Commissioner Lennon, is a couple of the action items that we discussed were, what are some of the big ticket items that the Planning Commission, should legitimately be involved in, like the continuation and the completion of the downtown, project that Travis is running with. We're going to start work on the comprehensive plan. I don't know if I should call it the redo or the update or whatever the verb is. We're going to go address that, as a couple. And then the other thing we were going to talk about, which I think has kind of come up in our collective discussions tonight, is there's probably some process improvement work that we could, we as a combined planning entity could and should take a look at. So my question is, have we given any thought to, much like we did with the special use permit exercise, maybe have a couple of us, work, as representing the commission, working with the planning staff to kind of help them keep those things going on, act as a, council advice, because we don't set policy, I get that, but to work with them as they, do the careful deliberation. So it's just, my question is, have we given any more thought about, creating a subgroup to work with the staff, or are we still a little too far out from that?
The quick answer is no.
Okay. Didn't mean to
but-
put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. But I will follow up with Ms. Painter and have a conversation and come back
Because
to
I'll
the commission with
I'll
some.
publicly volunteer to be part of that, because
Appreciate that.
I've got time to
Yep.
do that, so,
I think the challenge will be identifying the issues that we want to
right,
focus on, but I'll be happy to talk to Ms. Painter about that.
that'd be great, thank you.
Any items from, items from commissioners first, so I will mention, as a private citizen, quote unquote, I met with the Cape Fear Alliance, I'm gonna mess this up, sorry, the Tree Alliance, in regards to their code and canopy document. I don't know how many of you have read that. If you haven't, you should. It is a proposal on their part for the preservation of our tree canopy and the enhancement of it. They asked me to meet with them, and I did, and I thought it was a very productive time together. We met for almost 2 hours. A lot of conversations, some agreement, some pretty strenuous disagreement. But one of the encouraging things I thought I'd point out is that their report does specifically call out the need for things like height and density and performance residential as ways to, my words, kill two birds with one stone, which is tree preservation and housing. So I'd encourage you to read that document if you haven't already. And then my last thing was a quick question. Ms. Painter, the county has a tool, a mapping tool, where you can go in and look and see pending projects on a map or listed. And the city's old development tracker map is toast after November, I think, of '24. Is there any way to?
Yeah, so you are correct that
Okay.
right now, so one of the things, we are in the middle of a transition currently to an electronic permitting system. And so when we transitioned our TRC projects to that has taken our focus as the administrative permitting. We will be coming back at some point to say, okay, once we have everything into that system, is there a way we can then tie that back to GIS? It's just not clean right now. And so that's, I would say, is one of our desires as well, that we have a map where you can see what's happening in your neighborhood. It's just, we're trying to get through our complete conversion at this point.
Yeah, I'm just one member up here, but this all started from my wife asking me a question this morning that I couldn't find the answer to. So, but then I looked back and I remembered, oh yeah, this thing has been turned off, my words, since last year. And it is useful from my perspective, and I think the public would appreciate it too.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Anybody else? Items
I
from
just
staff?
have a quick
Oh,
comment.
sorry. Commissioner Jones?
I just want to thank Travis for presenting today. I'm participating in a 2-day chamber event, leadership event, and you did a great job, by the way, but I think the advocacy, putting the information out there with different groups is very important. So thank you for coming and doing that.
Commissioner Pollack?
Yeah, I just want to share with everybody. Monday, I went to the public engagement meeting that NCDOT ran for the Independence Road project, and I have to. I'm going to be very honest. I came out of that with a different perspective on things. On the hardship that potential eminent domain situation could cause for people, and just admittedly, somewhat of a personal epiphany on the hardship in that. I thought the meeting was done well. I thought the residents represented themselves very well. Councilman Spears was there as well. But I thought it was interesting to see the democratic process work whereby people have the opportunity to come up in a public forum, state their opinions, state their reasons for the opinions, and I think there was a diligent effort to record those opinions, and so it'll be interesting to see, what happens with that going forward. But, I just think about the rate and pace that a project that started 50 years ago in a design state, and now it looks like something might be actually happening. It's interesting to watch, and we should all pay attention to that. But I thought it was a well-run meeting, and I was very impressed with the citizens that came to represent themselves. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Items from staff?
So I believe that since you have not met since October, my dates are blurring together, but I believe the council in the meantime did approve 2 projects, or maybe that was earlier, but one was the Apex that was the 100% affordable housing development on Market Street, where the existing motel is, the Azalea Inn, and the other was the 2 duplexes on Wrightsville Avenue. So those were approved by City Council. I will add to Commissioner Lennon, Chairman Lennon's comments. I would expect to see a tree ordinance proposal coming forward to this commission. So we will work with members of the commission, as well as the Alliance, the Tree Commission. There are a lot of interested parties, including the development community, as we look at ways that we can continue to strengthen our protections of trees, and also recognize that not all trees are the same. And that there are some. One of the challenges that we have is when you're writing regulations, you don't necessarily want to write 20 pages that can address every single potential parameter and difference. But we also recognize that there may be some things in our regulations today that are creating, again, unintended consequences that we need to look at and see if there's a different way we can approach that.
Linda, will that piece of information also cover residential rules that apply, or is this more commercial at this point?
I don't think we have gotten that far. So I think what you're referring to, are you referring to the current exemption to like 1 acre residential properties?
Yeah, exactly.
We have not gotten that far into the
Okay.
discussion, if that's something that folks want to bring up. But as Commissioner Pollack alluded to, we do have an exemption currently for residential properties of 1 acre or less that are not subject to the tree preservation requirements. So just to say that is on our agenda for the next 6 months. So we will be involving you. We will be involving the development community, the Tree Alliance, and the Tree Commission. We expect to cast a wide net as we work on this. Thank you, Commissioner Jones, for bringing up the Greater Downtown Plan, because it gives me the perfect opportunity to ask all of you to go to our Greater Downtown Plan website if you have not already. And there are 4 surveys. I will tell you each one of them is very short, but what we have done is created surveys, 1 survey for each theme that is covered by the plan. And we are using that data to help inform us in terms of, did we hear you right? So it asks folks to help us prioritize by identifying what their favorite action under each strategy is. They can tell us what their lowest priority is. You can tell us what you want to eliminate, and you can have a free form field where you can tell us what we missed and what you think we should add or change. So those surveys are live, and Travis and his staff have, as usual, been doing a phenomenal job of getting out to the public the presentation that Commissioner Jones mentioned today to the chamber event, as well as numerous pop-ups at the farmers market, at the food bank. There was a fall festival at Highwire. And many more than that. So they're getting out there.
39.
Right?
I listened.
Yes, 39 in phases 1 and 2, and I think we're already at 12 more during phase 3.
Seems like a lot of these are being held at breweries.
Good place, good place.
One of the things that I think Travis and his team have learned is that you go to where the people are.
Amen.
And so the farmers market, the weekend before Thanksgiving, There's a lot of people at the farmer's market, a lot of visitors from out of town who said, thank you, but no thank you. We don't want to take the survey or participate. We're not from here. But again, it's about going to where people are. And I think that has really been one of the successes of this plan, is not asking people to come to us, although there is going to be a community meeting and workshop on Thursday, December, is it 12th, Travis? 11th, Thursday, December 11th. So we will be doing a meeting again where there'll be an opportunity to see the plan presented in full.
Linda, if I may, going back to the trees, one suggestion I would make is that the one thing that seems to be disjointed in all of the tree ordinances, the payment in lieu money. It would be nice to have Parks and Rec provide regular updates on what they're doing with the money, because that seems to be the biggest question mark is, okay, we're paying, number one, you're paying to cut the trees down just so you can do it, but two, how is the money being spent? And I know it's being spent well because I've talked to Amy about it, but it would be nice for the public to hear that frequently.
And the only other note I have is actually not a city initiative, but I will let you know that the county has their updated comprehensive plan out for public comment currently if you are interested.
Very good. Have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
We will not roll call vote. All in favor?
See.
Good night. Thank you all for attending.